Okay, Dave, we're ready. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
We'll get started. We'll be timely. I'll be respectful of your time this evening. First of all, thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Dave Smith. I'm the New Hampshire DOT project manager for this project. This is the Webster 41429 project, as we call it and refer to it. Specifically for you folks, it's the assessment of improvements to the New Hampshire 127 bridge over the Blackwater River. It's just 600 feet to the north of where we are right now, so it's not a good time to go take a walk across the bridge, but if you're here and you want, or you go hiking in the trail, you certainly know the nature of the bridge and can appreciate it. We're going to go through a presentation tonight for you folks. We're going to give you some background on the project and give you a status update as to where we are. And at the end of the presentation, we're here to answer questions and provide any insight that you would like as we kind of close out the meeting. We were back here in October. We gave a presentation to the select board. We heard some good insight from the select board relative to the project that we'll share as we progress along. And we'll be here to answer any questions you folks have. So we'll work off this slideshow. So the DOT's mission, we just like to share our mission with you folks so you know who we are and what our focus is. We are serving and connecting New Hampshire through transportation, right? That's what we do for you folks. Our vision is a safe, reliable, connected multimodal transportation system effectively managed by a dedicated and skilled workforce. With me here tonight, I have Mike Brassard from AECOM. I have Kimberly Peace from HTA, Hoyle Tanner. I have Melly Doobie with me. She's also a DOT employee. And Ron Kleiner, also a DOT employee with me here tonight. So Mike and Kimberly and I will give you the presentation this evening, and we'll answer any of those questions that you may have. This is the rest of our team. We have Vector Corrosion. Mike, what's Vector Corrosion do for us?
Yeah, Vector Corrosion did the materials testing and a service life modeling for us.
On the bridge, right? So we have Preservation Company. Kimberly, what does Preservation Company do for us?
So Preservation Company is a historical structure professionals, and they assess the historical nature of the bridge itself and the historic district.
Okay. And we have Doucette Survey, who, as you'd expect, they did the survey for the corridor, much like you see in the plans, from just to the south of the town hall here to the north of the bridge, say 1,000 feet to the north, right? So that's what we design and build our plans from, is Doucette Survey's survey efforts. And then we have CXC. Mike, what does CXC do for us?
Yes, CXC is Construction Experts Consulting, Inc. They're affiliated with SPS, who's a big bridge contractor in Massachusetts, and they are helping us out with cost estimating and constructability reviews for some of the options that we're looking at.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. So this is our design team between the DOT and the consultants that we brought on to help, or if not lead, the design for the bridge improvements. As the agenda has been developed, we'll talk about the existing bridge. We'll get into some of the details, the location, of course, we know about, but we'll show you some photos. We'll talk about the condition. We'll talk about the need for the project. We will talk about the rehabilitation and replacement alternatives that we're evaluating. We'll talk about the cultural and natural resources, those environmental topics that we are, in groups that we're engaging as we develop the improvements. We'll talk about schedule, and we'll talk about budget, so you folks know the cost and the timeline for the improvements here. So with that, Mike, let me turn to you, and I'll have you take over from there.
Sure. So this slide here is depicting the location of the bridge. As Dave already mentioned, it's right out the door, up the road, maybe 100, 200 feet. We all know where it is. Okay, and then we've got a couple of maps here. So this map on the left is showing a study area, and actually I think the study area has expanded a little bit from what's shown here. On the right, we have the project limits, and so basically this is kind of showing the same area that we see over on the plans on the sides of the room here. And basically that's the stretch of road that will be impacted, that we think will be impacted. All right, so the bridge was built in 1941. It's a reinforced concrete rigid frame arched structure. It's all integral. The deck is one piece with the beams and the legs. It's got a 65-foot center span, and the total bridge length is 164 feet. And as it says on the slide there are 4 of those legs that hold up the structure. It's supported on shallow, spread footings right on bedrock. And it's 34'4" wide, and estimated traffic is about 1,200 vehicles per day. That was back in 2020, and it's been on the red list of deficient bridges since 2013. Here we've got some site photos, and it's basically, these 2 photos are just looking at the top side of the bridge. So the one on the right is looking north, the one on the left is looking south. And then we've got a couple more photos here. We've got a photo looking at the bridge from downstream, and then there's a photo looking upstream from the bridge. All right, so the bridge is in tough shape. There is a lot of corrosion, there's a lot of efflorescence, cracking, spalling, and that's kind of depicted here in the photos. You can see there's some concrete missing here, and that's a typical thing that we're seeing in all 4 of the girders. Lots of cracking. The deck here, we can see some exposed rebar below the deck, so it needs some repairs. So as I said before, the bridge has been on the red list for a long time. The bridge railing itself has deteriorated, and there have been some kind of makeshift repairs out there. If you take a close look, you can see there's an angle that's been welded on. And the bridge is posted with an E2 weight restriction, which means that certified vehicles are not supposed to be crossing the bridge. And that's basically trucks that are a little heavier than your normal legal loads that get a special registration. So right now we're in the study phase. We've been looking at rehab options and replacement options. And one of the first things we looked at is, of course, what do we do with traffic while we're doing this bridge work? And we determined that the traffic count is low enough that we can get away with 1-lane alternating traffic. So have a traffic signal out there that stops traffic while traffic going south crosses the bridge, and then the signals change, and then traffic going north takes their turn. So basically 1 lane at a time, carrying traffic both ways. So option 1, we looked at bridge and roadway closure, so that would be a detour. The detour is 40 miles around, so we think that's not gonna work. And that's of course on state routes. We're not using, the roads around here are, substandard for the type and level amount of traffic that the bridge does get. So option 2, we looked at maintaining 2 lanes of traffic. So that would require, of course, construction of a temporary bridge, 2-lane temporary bridge, while we demolish the existing one or demolish part of the existing one. The deck in particular kind of has to be replaced regardless of which option is selected. That will wind up with a pretty big impact. So if you put the temporary bridge on the east side, I think it's going to be uncomfortable to cross. There's a long span. Of course, you've got a lot of difficulty even building a bridge on that side. And then if you go on the west side, of course, you'd be looking at more impacts than what you see in the plans over here. So you're going further outside the right of way there. Option 3, and so this is sort of what I talked about, single lane alternating two-way traffic. So traffic goes north, the light changes, traffic goes south. You can do that by phasing part of the bridge, so building the bridge half at a time, or you could do that with a temporary bridge. All right, so we'll go through some rehab options that we've looked at. And option 1, and like I said, all these options for rehab include replacing the deck, which in itself is sort of a difficult thing to do because these are all the deck is one piece with the beams and the rigid frame legs. So it would be difficult to do this, to say the least. So what we're showing here, we're showing a temporary bridge on this slide. And again, 1-lane alternating traffic while the contractor comes in, demolishes the deck and puts a new deck on. And of course you get, we would reconstruct the back wall, so you've got some substructure work that has to go on and a lot of substructure repairs as well. Of course, the goal of the project would be to stay within the 100-foot right-of-way. We may have to see some impacts outside the right-of-way that are just temporary. Okay, So the second option that we looked at is phasing this rehabilitation with a widening. So that would be phase one, you demolish this piece of the bridge, and then you build back a wider piece on that side that you demolished. And you've got to put an extra beam in there in order to do that. So you're kind of changing the character of the bridge with this option. Again, you have the same substructure repairs, and it's sort of similar. The rest of the repair is similar. You end up with a wider bridge than option one. Okay, so now we've got a bridge rehabilitation alternatives matrix here, and what's important to point out here is the risks and disadvantages. There are many risks and disadvantages to a rehabilitation option, and only one of them has the advantage of retaining the historic value. The rest of them, you're taking away some of that value with either a steel beam, say, on the east or west side, kind of blocking the view of the original bridge anyway. And then, so we've got, this is the same table, just didn't fit on one slide, but again, you can see the list of disadvantages is much longer than the list of advantages here. Okay, so, and more recently, we've been looking at bridge replacement alternatives. Option one is a steel girder bridge replacement. It'd be a simple span. So, and what we're showing on this slide is, again, phased construction. They come in, demolish part of the bridge, traffic stays on the remaining piece while they build the first part of the new bridge. Then they move traffic over, demolish, and build the rest of the bridge. So, and you end up in, and this bridge is a little bit wider. I think it's 1 foot 8 inches wider than the existing bridge, the one shown here. And this is what that might look like in plan view and elevation view. One option for the steel beams you could have is to give it this sort of haunched profile to kind of mimic what's out there in the center span. That may or may not happen. You could also do this with a straight steel girder bridge if that option is selected. And we can see here, we end up shifting the road over 10.5 feet in order to phase it in the way that was shown in the previous slide. And Kimberly,
Sure.
why don't you tell us about section 106?
Sure, I'll take over. Thank you. So my name is Kimberly Peace. I work for Hoyle Tanner and Associates, and we are the consultant that is working with the DOT in the town to undergo the environmental and cultural review for the project. This is because we have partial federal funding for the project, and through that process then we undergo what's called the National Environmental Policy Act, which is NEPA. You may have heard environmental assessments or environmental impact statements. For this type of project, we go through an analysis of what's called a categorical exclusion, and we go through all of these categories of environmental and cultural resources so that we understand what the potentials are for the different alternatives, and so that we can give the public a good understanding of what we're facing as we identify what we're going to do for the project. So one of those steps is that we go through what's called, we address a national law, the Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. We often call this Section 106. And this is something where we invite the public to provide input to us on any impacts to cultural resources. That includes the historic bridge itself, the historic district that we have that's from the Army Corps Dam just upstream, as well as any potential archaeological resources that you may or may not know or suspect or are aware of. We do know that there's the old mill complex there that's also being evaluated. So because of that process, I just want everybody to know, if you have an organization, the Historic Society, I believe, has been invited to become what's called a consulting party. And that means you get a more formal seat at the table. It doesn't mean that we exclude anyone else from the table. It just means that there's a little bit different of a process. If you're interested in becoming a consulting party, you can feel free to reach out to myself or Dave or Melly. I think she's handed her card out tonight as well. And then that gives you a more documented role in the process. Otherwise, as we continue to explore the effects on the cultural resources, on the bridge, on the historic district, we are going to return to the town for other opportunities for you to provide public input. So this is the start of the process. It is by no means a done deal, and this is our first step in coming to you and getting your input and information.
And if you'd like or are interested in Section 106 and be a consulting party, there is a flyer here, a corner of the table. You can feel free to grab one if you're interested.
Okay. So as we start our environmental assessment and our assessment of all the impacts that we take a look at for this project, we identify the resources. That's step one. What do we have available out here on this project site? First of all is the bridge. The unique character of those span legs gives us that really unique structure and a location and just that style. It is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. It was determined eligible quite a bit ago. It is located within this historic dam flood control area and has a role in that, as well as it's just a very unique structure that was built in 1941. I believe, I was checking on this today, I think this particular style with these legs that are integral to the deck, there may be very few, I want to say 3 left in the state. So it is a unique structure, and we do have to address that as we go through the process. There is an archaeological survey that has been done, and we've identified some potential archaeologically sensitive areas within the project. We are continuing that evaluation. Step one is sort of identify where we think they may be, and then as we do further investigations, we also take a look at how can we avoid assessing those, continuing to, we want to make sure we know where they are, but we also don't want to impact them as we do that. So we're looking at one of the main goals is to shift the project further away from that historic mill complex so that we don't have any disruption of artifacts that we may not know about yet. But that is still ongoing, and we'll continue to update you as we go through that process. And then we look at the natural resources. The biggest one that runs through the project area is the Blackwater River and the wetlands and floodplains associated with the river. This is what New Hampshire DES will call a Tier 3 stream crossing, which means it's one of the largest and more important rivers in the state. And so when we go to do wetland permitting through the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, we identify a more stringent set of rules when we look at a Tier 3 stream crossing, a bridge of this nature. And it is within the protected shoreland, so that's a different set of rules within the state that we will also have to get a shoreland permit for. So those are 2 permits that we understand we will need to achieve. Our role right now is to look at avoidance and minimization. So how do we reduce the impacts to the stream, the wetlands, the protected shoreland, as we go through addressing the need to meet the goal of replacing or rehabilitating this bridge. So we're all still in those additional initial steps to look at that. We take a look at federally protected species. We don't have any potential impacts on federally endangered species or threatened species at this time. We did identify that there are potential for state protected habitat. It doesn't mean they're there, it just means we've identified potential habitat for turtles and for mussels. That work will be ongoing in the future, so it could end up being a survey, it could end up being what we could call a conservation measure, which means we look at time of year of construction or how do we protect the habitat in certain ways. So those are also, that's work that needs to be done, and as we continue to identify what exactly we're going to do here, we will continue consultation with New Hampshire Fish and Game so that we reduce, avoid, and minimize those impacts to those listed species. It is surrounded by what the state calls a highest ranked habitat with a prioritized habitat block. It means it's in a very unique setting, and we do have a lot of wildlife concerns. And so because of that, it feeds into our review of the design and how we minimize those impacts. So that is something else that we're aware of. We also know that it isn't a flood hazard and that we have some conservation land parcels that are nearby. So again, all of these, we're in the identification process, and as we identify them, that feeds into our design about what's the best way to achieve the goal of the project while avoiding and minimize impacts to all of these resources. And then I believe I hand it over to you.
I'll take it. Yep. Thank you, Kimberly. So we just have a couple more slides to talk about. This one primarily here. So from a schedule and cost perspective, we're still earlier on in the assessment of the improvements. Again, we've talked about assessing the rehabilitation or the replacement of the bridge. The draft NEPA document, or the NEPA document that Kimberly talked about, we're anticipating that to be developed summer of this year, summer of '26. We expect to have another public informational meeting just like this later this summer. At that time, we plan and hope that we will have completed the coordination with the environmental agencies, and we'll have a firm recommendation as to what we'll do with the bridge. Again, either rehab or replacement. We hope to have a public hearing by the end of this year, if not fall of this year. That's a very pivotal meeting for us. It sets a layout for the improvement, in essence meaning the alignment, the type of improvement. It identifies right-of-way impacts. We are fortunate here, and I had mentioned the right-of-way with some folks prior to the presentation. I'll mention it here for awareness. We have a very wide right-of-way. It's 100-foot wide, so 50 feet either side of the existing roadway. So that works well. It gives us a wide footprint to construct improvements, and it means less impacts onto what some maybe your properties. So that wide right-of-way is fortunate for us as we look to construct these improvements. We can touch more on that after the meeting if you'd like. Have any questions, let us know. So we talk about those impacts, the plan for improvement at that public hearing. That public hearing would be overseen by a commission of 3 individuals. They are identified and confirmed by the governor and council as the commission, and with that specific role. Those folks would hear the presentation from the DOT. They would hear testimony from the public. They would assess that going forward, and subsequent to the DOT's development of a report of the commissioner, which responds to all of the testimony we hear at the hearing, the commission would either find in favor of the project or not. And that's how we would progress subsequent to the hearing. So that's a very pivotal meeting for us, and hopefully we could have that later this year and keep us moving towards an improvement to the bridge. Subsequent to the hearing, we would finalize our NEPA documents. We're identifying that for, say, the end of this year, 2026. Further out, after we cleared the hearing and had a solution for the bridge from an improvement perspective, we would be on to final design. That's probably got a 2-year time frame. We would firm up our right-of-way impacts, acquire the right-of-way for the project, and look to start construction and or put out for bids to contractors in October of 2028. That's our current target. If we're able to meet that October 2028 advertising date, that means we would start construction in the spring of 2029. So we still are a few years out from any improvement here. We have, again, the environmental processes, the public hearing, the final design efforts still ahead of us. And it takes time, it's tedious in meeting with property owners, working through the impacts, negotiating impacts and so forth, working through the environmental permitting aspects that Kimberly talked about. That's all still ahead of us at this point. Right now, we're starting to identify estimates for the improvement. We're looking at a range right now between $11 and $13 million to construct improvements to this bridge. Mike talked about some of the challenges here in the nature of the Blackwater River being 40 feet below the bridge deck. That'll be a challenge for construction. The maintenance of traffic during construction will be a challenge. We've seen our construction costs escalate significantly over the past few years. So at this point, and we'll firm these up as we progress. We'll come back, we'll have even better costs. But we're looking at $11 to $13 million for a bridge improvement out here, and that's either a rehab or replacement. Rehab, probably on the order of $11 million. If we were to replace the bridge, it'd be more costly, when we're expecting it to be about the $13 million range. So with that, we'll close our presentation. We'll open it up to you folks for questions. We'll hopefully have some good answers for you. This is contact information for myself, for Mike, and for Kimberly. I'll leave this up here. I know I did print out some hard copies for you folks. I didn't print out too many, not knowing what we get for turnout, but I know there are some hard copies floating around out there. Our contact information is here. We do have a project website also, specific to this project, that these plans and this slideshow will be on by the end of the week. So if you want to refer to the presentation, you'll again have the plans and presentation on that website. This is the location for it. It'll take you right to it. If you type that in, it'll take you right to the website, right to this information that we will post. So with that, let's transition to the question and answer timeframe. So are there any public officials that would like to ask any questions, providing any insight on the project? Yes.
Hi, I'm Amanda Elms. I'm the Conservation Commission Chair.
Great.
And I was wondering if there are any either temporary or permanent impacts you're anticipating to the conservation easements nearby.
Where's the Kimberly or Melly, are you familiar with the conservation easement?
So we are aware that there are conservation easements in the area, and we're still taking a look at that and identifying where we need to be. As Dave said, we have a very wide right-of-way out here, so one of our primary targets is to try to keep all work within the right-of-way as much as possible. And so we're still evaluating that, but we are aware of that, and we do know that they're out there, and we do have to continue to address those through our evaluation process.
Okay.
And let me give some insight relative to, you may be talking about the
Phelps Conservation Easement?
in the northeast of the bridge?
Yeah.
So yeah, so let me give some insight relative to that. So if you look at the detail of this plan, the blue line shows that right-of-way line. The green shows the tree line out there. And so the good thing is, with a westerly shift of the roadway alignment, we're shifting away from that conservation property. We do know and aware that there's a trail system that goes down and accesses the river. Good view of the bridge upstream. And this plan also shows a formalized parking area, 100-foot long and 12-foot wide for folks to park and to access the trail system. The footprint of the improvements is within the right-of-way. So as we look and develop the plans currently, there's no impact to this conservation property. Okay? And so we will continue to work, as Kimberly mentioned, we'll continue to work with probably yourself and other groups relative to that piece of property and others if they are within the project limits.
Okay, a follow-up question. Regarding that kind of pull-off parking area that's used frequently by residents of the town for hiking in that area, is that going to be impacted during the project? Will it be closed, or how long roughly do you think people wouldn't be able to park there
Yeah.
for?
I expect it will be, because the construction of the bridge will need some staging areas. And it's a topic we need to discuss further.
Okay.
We know that this is utilized, we've seen vehicles parked there. We also know that, based upon our discussion at the select board meeting, folks park here and walk up and access it. That may be a temporary solution during construction, that folks do park here and walk up and access the trail system. We did talk about a widened panel on the bridge to accommodate that pedestrian that comes from here that wants to go to the trail. So we'll continue to have those discussions as we progress. The challenge is that this parking area is so close to that bridge operation. We wouldn't want to put any pedestrians or hikers in a unsafe situation. We will, Ron, we will have to have, Mike, right, we'll have to have accommodations for pedestrians during construction. So that's something that, as we develop our plans, we will work to assess as well. Okay.
I have one more comment.
Sure.
Like technically last year, so 2025, I did notice evidence of a wood turtle in that parking area,
Okay.
right there. So I don't know if that was noted in your findings yet, but it's a species of special concern in New Hampshire. So
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that. And wood turtles they're very active close to rivers such as this one. So there might be more in the area potentially.
Okay. And Kimberly, how do we assess for the wood turtle? Can you give some insight relative to the wood turtle and its prevalence, or how do we assess for it?
Sure, because it's a species of special concern, and it did show up on our listing, we have to identify conservation measures for what we could do to protect the species. Number one is avoidance, so minimizing the impacts to the banks and the river itself. And then number two is minimization. Sometimes that takes the form of a time of year restriction, or sometimes what we'll do, for example, is put in protection measures, so exclusionary fencing, or the cofferdams sometimes serve as fencing so that we don't have turtles that are overwintering in the habitat for the where we're constructing. So essentially you want to identify your work area, clear it of turtles, and then make sure the turtles can't enter over winter, and so that way you're not impacting them. So there may be temporary impacts to the habitat, but we know that we're not affecting the species, the individuals. But we did see that, and I do know that that turtle is on our list.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other public officials? Dave?
So I would just, along that similar line, of course, working with the New Hampshire DOT, we just finished replacing our other bridge just further down the Blackwater River, so you may be able to pull a bunch of the information from there of what you're likely to expect. And the other thing I was going to bring up was the platform and the walkway, but you've now done that, so thank you.
Any other public officials? Sir, yes.
Webster Deputy Fire Chief. During construction, is there gonna be a lower weight restriction on the bridge?
Mike, what do you expect?
I don't expect there would be, I mean, it's already restricted, so.
So I shouldn't have any issues getting my trucks across?
You shouldn't
No.
have any issue, it should be no different than the way it is now, say that.
We'll coordinate closely with the town relative to emergency operations. Once we do identify that traffic control, that construction phasing operation. Typically, for these single lane, alternating two-way operations that we talked about, we maintain at least a clear distance of 16 feet from, say, rail to curb or barrier to barrier. So we'll work with you and other emergency folks relative to say, is that enough for your equipment to get through there? We'll make sure that we have that coordination behind. Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions? General public, any other questions?
Yeah, with the existing bridge conditions, and you're not going to target start of this project till 29, will you be shoring up some of the cracks in the concrete, gutters and stuff? Or?
Yeah. Ron, have there been anything beyond? We know the railing has been modified, right? That was an interim manner just to improve the railing. Ron, was there anything else that was done recently or by a bridge maintenance folks?
I don't know of anything offhand. Obviously, it's on the red list, so it is inspected more frequently than other bridges in the state. We're aware of the problems. If things arise, we would address them if they needed to be. So I have nothing planned and nothing I'm aware of that just happened, but yes, we're watching it, yes, we're monitoring it. And if it needs something in between, you would be able to take care of that.
We've had discussions with our bridge maintenance group. They're right in the same building, just attached to the same office as Ron's. Levi Byers is the administrator there. He's well aware of this bridge. His crews are well aware of it. As Ron mentioned, we inspect this bridge once a year, which is more frequent than the standard every 2 years, Ron?
We inspect it twice a year as opposed to two.
Okay, I'm sorry, twice a year, twice a year, as opposed to the regular frequency. So we're aware of the challenges and the needs with the bridge, and we'll make sure that we stay on top of that. I want to mention something too. Mike said this bridge is in need of improvement. You shouldn't feel concerned about driving over the bridge. We don't want to imply that you shouldn't be driving over the bridge. But at the end of the day, the bridge does need improvement. So I didn't want you folks walking out of here having concern about driving along Route 127 over the Blackwater River. Okay. So, thank you, sir. You good?
Yeah.
Yes, you good one.
As far as cost goes, now, isn't Route 127 a state road? What's the cost effect to the town versus what the state will pick up, you know, how does that bill get split up? And you had mentioned, she'd mentioned that the federal government's gonna put in some stuff too, but what's the impact on the town, percentage-wise, I guess?
From a construction perspective, nothing, as we know the project right now. The project will be funded 80% federal and 20% state. Now, I don't know that there are any underground, say, town utilities or anything through this corridor. That's the only thing I can think of that would be, say, something that the town may have to participate in. But we know on the west side, we have aerial utilities, of course, power, communications, and so forth. That will be borne by, any impacts to that utility will be borne by them. So at this point, we don't expect any town costs, town to bear any costs. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What if the government decides to send us fewer dollars?
Yeah. So that will affect our program as a whole, right? So this bridge and this project was incorporated into the 10-year plan. And you may have heard our commissioner or the governor, the councilors talk about the 10-year plan. We're just going through the process of updating that 10-year plan. And we're finding, I mentioned earlier, our construction costs have just been escalating significantly. And so that 10-year plan has been fiscally constrained, meaning we didn't allow any new projects into the 10-year plan. And as a matter of fact, we cut out some of the projects from the plan. And that's with the funding that we are getting from the federal government. If we were to get less funding from the federal government, and we know that we have our transportation bill expires in September of this year, we will have to assess again our 10-year plan. I expect we'll have if that's the case, we'll have a strategy that will focus on our more immediate needs and move out projects that aren't those priority projects, and it'll be a tough assessment for us. But as we sit here today, we're advancing this project. We know there's a need, and the design team that we have here will continue to advance this project. Yes, Dave.
Along those lines, roughly how many projects are in that plan, and roughly where is the prioritization, like higher, lower, for this project?
Yeah. I expect, I don't know the exact numbers, I expect in that 10-year plan, there are probably 300 to 350 projects, order of magnitude, and they range from, and I say that, it's a 10-year plan, of course, right? And there must be 35 to 40 projects per year, I expect, so that's the order of magnitude I'm expecting. They range from bridge projects like this to culvert projects, guardrail projects, paving projects, across the whole scope of transportation needs. Okay. As we progress, as we are faced with diminishing funds or increased funds, right? We know with the transportation bill we have now, we get an increase in transportation funding, so that worked out well for us. What it did allow is for us to kind of keep pace with the escalating costs. But we will have to assess as we progress. September, we'll know better as to what the next transportation bill looks like. We hope Congress and the administration will have a plan in place for us come September. And our leadership at the DOT will be in touch with Federal Highway and other folks relative to that. So we'll have more as we progress. More knowledge, that is, relative to our transportation bill, as well as the project. I'll go to the gentleman back. Sir.
So, I had a couple of quick questions. So, since everybody's been answering my questions before they got there. So, is maintaining the structure legs what keeps it historic? But since it's only one of 3 or 4 bridges, is it a good setup to continue? Or is just building, like say we built a new bridge, for example, is it still maintained as historic, not that, that doesn't bother me one way or the other. But my thing is also with the historic piece, does that still keep it, hold on a second, does that still keep it a federal funded type of thing?
I can speak relative to the funding, and I'll look for Kimberly to give some insight relative to the historic aspect. The bridge will remain federally funded. That's not gonna change. We mentioned it's on a state route. It is a federally funded project at that 80-20 split, and so that won't change as we progress forward. If you wanna give some insight relative to the historic aspect.
Sure, so as we talked about the fact that this is unique and that the deck is part of those legs, that it's difficult, very, very difficult and very costly to try to repair the deck and the legs and in a way that keeps what we call this the historic significance. When you evaluate a bridge for historic significance, you look at 4 federally identified criteria, and some of those are just the nature of it, how it looks, significant engineering that was used at the time, location and setting. So location and setting of the bridge aren't going to change. We'll still have a bridge here, but obviously we're going to, if we were to completely replace the bridge, we're going to lose that historic structure. And so that is part of the process that we go through. So we look at what's called the effect of that and how it has to be mitigated. And so we'll come back to you with a process. If we choose to replace the bridge, we would come back and say, what should we do for historic mitigation? What are your suggestions? I believe you did something very similar with Clothespin Bridge where you had to do some historic mitigation as well. So it is a unique structure, and it's definitely an important part of the process as we evaluate rehabilitation versus replacement, is acknowledging that nature of how unique this structure is. But it all also has to be weighed in with purpose and needs, schedule, costs. The whole goal of the project is to have a bridge in this location for the safety of the public.
Well, it sounds like your new bridge design was like actually a little better because it wasn't having the footing and all of that same piece. Plus that's water that also rises and drops, radically rises and drops, which would avoid breakdown of stuff. And if it's actually down, it's actually a good idea. I was just curious if that affected any funding, financing, or any of that stuff. Because I don't know how everybody else feels, but it's the historic piece, if it's only 1 of 4, and there's a reason for that, probably because it's not a great idea anymore. You know, that makes sense. I just wanted to understand a little bit better.
And the federal funding that's been allocated or will be allocated for the project will include that historic mitigation. So development of photos or a plaque or whatever we determine is significant enough to match the loss of the resource if we replaced it. That is all federally funded as well.
So a rehab bridge,
I'm sorry.
so a rehab bridge is only good for 10 years and a new bridge is good for 50 years?
Mike?
Yeah, 10 to 20 years, and then 75 is a typical new bridge design life.
Okay, so for 11 versus 13 million.
Financially, it makes sense to replace it versus reconstruct it. I mean, I get the historical factor of it, but when we're talking dollar for dollar,
That'll come into play as we work to assess the recommendation and work with the environmental agencies to identify the best solution. That'll certainly come into play. The expected return on investment, Mike mentioned this bridge was built in 1941, so it's nearing 100 years old. But we have to weigh that against the environmental aspects as well. This gentleman had his hand up first. I'll get to you next, sir.
Just a quick question. If everything falls into place, we get all the funding, court hearing and stuff, and we start in 2029, do you have an idea what the time frame would be, of how long the bridge would be tied up?
Yeah. We're expecting, Mike, 2 construction seasons.
2 construction
So we start. So in essence, it would be construction season, which goes from say April to late November of each season. Of course, a lot of contractors shut down this time of year. So it would be, say, April to November of 29, April to November of 30.
A little more than 2 years, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There may be some final paving and striping in the subsequent year, depending upon how things progress and how well construction goes.
Right.
Mike mentioned, and we've talked about the challenging nature of this bridge, that 40-foot separation between the roadway and the stream itself. We've also had some discussion with the Army Corps of Engineers relative to the dam, and they have some, Kimberly, can you give some insight? It's relative to the release of water through there and some of the construction requirements that we may have to impart as well.
Sure, so this is close enough to the dam that the dam has an effect on it, and any releases would have an effect on our construction schedule. So we have initiated coordination and cooperation with the Army Corps to determine what we can do to how the dam would release water and how that would affect our construction schedule. Good and bad is the fact that the bridge is high above the stream. So it gives us room for that flow if it's needed, because this is a dam control, a flood control structure, and their goals need to be to preserve the capacity of the flood control structure and protect the areas. So if they need to do releases, obviously we have a little vertical room to do that, but it's going to be coordinated with them so that we have good discussions with them so that we make sure that we're not affecting their operational schedule and their floodplain protection, and they're not affecting the construction. So it is kind of a very coordinated effort between us to make sure that everyone maximizes the output for that.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah.
Sir, yes.
Is the engineering style of this particular bridge as it is now worthy of continuing, or is there better construction techniques that would really be appropriate to put here?
Mike? Yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking at with the Section 106 historical review, is kind of determining how much value the existing bridge has. Is it worth saving versus a 75-year design life for a new bridge? They're not building bridges this way anymore, so the steel bridge is going to be a more robust structure. It's up out of the water, and you get that 75-year design life. So.
Okay, because in the past, in other areas, I've seen cases where they paid extra money to make a bridge have the same arch style and stuff like that as an existing bridge, because it's going to parallel it rather than just, make a good bridge.
Yeah, and in this case, it is very difficult to kind of match exactly what's out there with the legs down in the river. Like Kimberly was saying, we did coordinate with Army Corps, who actually owns some of the land technically under the bridge. And one requirement that they will have on the construction is, given 24 hours notice, the contractor will have to pull everything, if they have anything in the river, within 24 hours, they would have to pull everything out. So to build another structure with the legs in the river like that is more or less not feasible. So I guess, does that answer the question? So you could also give it architectural effects, like do a haunched steel girder to give it sort of a similar feel or similar look or profile with a steel bridge. But to do the legs down in the river, I think, is probably not going to happen.
Well, you were talking about one of the options was to widen the bridge, which would mean another leg would have to be added.
Yeah, correct. That's something we've looked at, and we've determined that that's most likely not going to be a favorable alternative.
I'm sorry?
That's not going to be the alternative that we recommend.
Okay.
I think I'm hearing the legs have got to go. Correct?
It's a challenge engineering-wise, cost-wise. We were just discussing, we do a lot of work around the state with other historic bridges, and one of the interesting factors of this is that as fun and interesting and beautiful as they may be, you really don't see them unless you're standing in the river. We've had other bridges in the state that are much, you see it more. That is definitely a factor. And again, we are still at the beginning steps of all of this, and we're still evaluating all this. So it's all piled together. So as you said, the concept of order of magnitude, like, how much more expensive is it to save the legs? How much more would it be? What's the life? How much more life could we get out of the bridge on that cost versus a 75-year design life on a steel bridge? All of these come into play as we start to make these decisions.
If I'm understanding you right, from an engineering standpoint, if you have to guarantee the Army Corps you can pull the stuff out, the contractor in 24 hours, you couldn't build a coffer dam to hold cement back anyway. I mean, realistically.
That's probably true. Yeah, I don't see a good option. Now, if you could work with Army Corps and get special permit to do something like that, perhaps, but for a normal construction project, that would be a requirement.
Is the concrete in the legs in bad shape?
The concrete in the legs is not as in bad a shape as the deck is. So the further up you go in that structure, the worse it gets, because it's closer to the salt. It's 3,000, we broke some cylinders in the leg, it's 3,000 PSI concrete, which is, they still use 3,000 PSI concrete today for footings and things, not for superstructures. But to just save the legs would be sort of, I don't wanna say impossible, but, very difficult, because if you cut the beams off the top of the leg, now the leg just wants to tip over, so you'd have to hold it there to keep it. So the legs are one piece with the beams and the deck, so it's all one piece. So the beams are a little better than the legs, a little worse than the deck, but better than the legs, right? So the beams are in bad shape as well. They're rated, I think, a 3 or a 4 on bridge inspection reports, which is pretty bad in terms of existing condition.
I get you. Thank you.
I'm way over here, sir.
So, does anybody actually see the bottom of the bridge?
When you hike down.
So if you look on the plan here, there is a trail system. We talked about the parking area, right, just to the northeast of the bridge is a parking area here. There's a trail that walks down to the river level, and you can see a profile of the bridge. The only way you'd see underneath the bridge is if you were to walk up the river and be under the bridge itself. If we do have some pictures, if you'd like to see, you can even come up and look after we get done discussing it to see some of the, see the condition of the bridge. But that's, to answer your question, to see under the bridge, you'd have to be, you'd obviously be right under it. I'll go back to you, sir.
Okay. I was thinking that since this is a flood control dam, not a hydroelectric plant, that it would be a seasonal thing, and if there's no hurricanes come up through here, they'd have opportunity to extend the work period more than 24 hours.
Kimberly, do you know the frequency of the releases of the dam by chance?
I don't, and,
It depends on the weather.
I mean, we all wish we could control the weather, but we just have no idea. If there is a significant rain event or a series of significant rain events where the dam, the number one reason for the dam is flood control, and that trumps anything that we would do. So as we were saying, we have to have all the equipment out of the river. Army Corps said we have to be able to release this dam as needed. So that, because that's why that infrastructure is here. So we will do the best we can with the construction season, but obviously the less work that's needed in the stream and in that area, and that would have to be affected by the dam, it obviously makes it easier for the process.
And just to make a note, that easement only has one way to go in, and it's the one by the dam. There's nothing else. It's all private behind it,
Okay,
so.
that's the Phelps easement, right?
Dave?
So just to touch upon the comment about seeing the bridge and/or from under it. Yeah, if you want to see underneath it, yes, you'd have to go to it. But from the trail system, as mentioned in Lock Forest, and also if you're, for example, doing some of the extended story walks out of Pearson Park during Old Home Day and similar, or when the kayak races and canoe races are happening, they're all going up in that area, so they will all have very good vision of the bridge. Of course, they're not under the bridge, but they'll have good vision of the bridge.
And so I was made aware of the kayak events. They still hold those?
Yes,
They do?
yes, once a year.
Is it once a year? And do they release from the dam to support that event, or how does that all work? Yeah, they do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do.
I see.
It's water.
Roaring? Is it roaring through there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yes?
I'm curious if the parking lot for the trails, is that bigger than what it is existing? Or is it about the same size, just designate? I don't know.
Yeah, it's longer
It's long.
and it's more formal.
Okay.
Because you may be familiar with it. It's gravel, it kind of drops off from the edge of pavement, and it kind of bows or widens out, and then it gets narrow again. I don't know, you folks can tell us how many vehicles you see parked there. I'd say 2 vehicles parking there would be okay, but more than that would probably be unsafe for anything. With 100-foot long and 12-foot wide, a vehicle is say, you have about a 25-foot. That's what it's in assessing traffic analysis, if you will. We say a vehicle's 25 foot long. Between, you know, the vehicle length and the separation between the vehicle in front of it. So that would accommodate 4 vehicles in its current layout. It's challenging because it's really only a directional parking lot, meaning the only way you can access it would be to head north. You may find some people that want to head south and force their way in there, but it's really a directional, a northbound parking area, right? So that's what we're showing currently. If you have any other thoughts relative to that, you know, let us know. And yes. Oh, are you all set?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
No, I was just asking, is the plan to keep it gravel, or are you planning on paving it?
Yeah, that's something we can discuss. I don't know that we would have a preference either way. I don't know what the town would think relative to it. The DOT would, it being an adjacent part of 127, the DOT would maintain it. I don't know that we have a preference either way.
I was curious.
Yeah. I do want to mention one thing as well, because if you folks know the area, I'm sure, on this east side of 127, north of the bridge, the slopes fall off very, very quickly. They're very, very steep. So one thing that we've looked at is replacing that cable guardrail that's on that northbound side, north of the bridge. It's an old cable guardrail. So we're looking at replacing that and extending the project a bit to accommodate that. So we're showing a guardrail that would go to the northerly limits of the project and back through, probably through the limits of the parking. Of course, we can't block off the pathway, but there'd also be guardrail extending north off the bridge. So looking to protect that slope as well as part of the improvements. Yes, sir.
When you were talking about the having to get out in like 24-hour type of thing, it looks like the new design, and that seems like the most logical thing, but nevertheless, if that was the design that was done, it sounds like really the only reason you need to be down below would be the demo, because after that, it doesn't look like anything else is gonna be down there. Was that accurate?
Yeah, that's right, and we have CXC looking at the constructability and some construction options as we speak. Maybe not this minute, but as the days go by, they're still looking at that stuff. And yeah, all the construction work that we anticipate would be done from the top. The new abutments would be behind the existing, so they're high in the banks, and all your work happens, up at this level.
Yes.
Cost-wise, a steel bridge versus restoring the old one? What's better?
Yeah, Mike, you want to give some insight relative to
Cost-wise, steel versus what?
rehab versus replacement, or?
Yeah, so far, we're looking at 11 million for the rehab, and by the time it happens, maybe that creeps up, and then right now, we're thinking 13 million. We're still working on the cost estimate to finalize that number, but yeah, 11 for a replacement, 11 for a rehab, 13 for a replacement, in that order.
We've talked about the benefits of each, right? Rehabilitation preserves the historicity of the bridge,
Right.
but it gives a very short, extended lifetime, 10 to 15 years. With the new bridge, we're finding, well, even bridges built 100 years ago are lasting 100 years. So Ron can give some insight relative to our expected lifespan. We're at 120 years for bridge.
Yes, those are correct. We
Right.
haven't made a schedule we fall on. We expect to do preservation work after 20 years, 40 years. We probably expect to replace the deck, do some more preservation work in 60 years. So You get to that 100, 120 year time frame, you're then looking at replacing the bridge again.
So, what we can't do as engineers is predetermine what the solution for the bridge improvement will be without collaborating with our environmental partners.
Of course.
And that's the process we're going through now. It's a sensitive one, because with federal funding, we have to do our diligence with our environmental partners. And again, so we're doing that.
For the rehab, is it a full depth deck?
We, Mike,
Yeah, the rehab would include replacing the entire deck,
as well as,
as well as a lot of, other repairs.
yeah. So Mike was talking about the piers or the legs. There would be repairs to the legs as well. Although the concrete deck is the most deteriorated portion, we'd have to remove portions of the arches as well as portions of the legs themselves, just because the concrete is getting to be 90 years, if not close to 100 years old. Bridges like this, a lot of our bridges are a testament to good craftsmanship, in the 20s and the 1910s and the 30s. We're seeing bridges that are still in good shape, that are nearing 100 years old. It all depends upon the use, how much salt was used on them. We tend to find, probably Mike, right, that over bridges tend to have a bit more deterioration than, say, those over other roadways. You find that, Mike?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Was it chloride test?
Yes, it was. Yep, we did chloride testing.
Is it in the legs?
There's more chloride the higher you go. So yes, there is chloride in the legs.
Yeah, but you're not telling me a number.
Oh, I don't remember the number. It's at active corrosion. Wow.
Even in the
Whatever that
legs?
is.
I mean,
We had
the cancer's in the leg, is what you're telling me.
We did see active corrosion in the legs. There was, in fact, where they did the test on the leg, they gave us a higher number for the active corrosion in the leg. So more testing would have to be done if you wanted to test each individual leg. But yes, we're seeing active corrosion.
We've got a report. We can provide it to you. It'd be great nighttime reading.
No, I'm retired. I'd put you to sleep.
Vector Corrosion, is that the group that did our chloride testing and assessment?
Yes.
We did do a thorough assessment.
Vector would like to say all the pucks, that's why.
I'm sorry?
Vector would love to say all the anti-corrosion pucks.
Oh. I'll go in the back, sir, yes.
I presume with the replacement or rebuild of the old bridge, you would be improving the drainage so that less of the salt would get onto the bridge itself anyway?
Yeah, so what we would envision from a roadway perspective, and I'll let Mike talk about the bridge drainage, but we would expect to put a drainage facility or system north of the bridge. Of course, we know from the north to the south, there's a good profile out here. 8% to, I think it's 5% across the bridge, Mike, and then it flattens out a bit on the south side. But we would put drainage installations on the north side of the bridge to keep the water off of it as much as possible. And throughout the whole length of the corridor, as a matter of fact. So that's what we do from a highway, from a drainage perspective. We know on the northwest corner of the bridge, there's a very wide swale that is there that will incorporate some of our drainage into as well. But Mike, do you want to get anything more relative to drainage on the bridge?
Yeah, sure. The drainage on the bridge, currently there are scuppers on the bridge, which allow the runoff to just go down through the deck, and we're seeing a lot of corrosion around those scuppers. Typically, when we build new bridges, we don't do that. We don't put scuppers in them anymore. So there would be some drainage system just north of the bridge, like Dave said, and then there would be an expansion joint which catches a lot of the runoff and filters it off. And then any water that lands on the bridge would have to run off the bridge the other way to the next catch basin. Yeah.
And Mike, can you give some insight relative to the nature of bridge construction these days with the pavement, the membrane, and the concrete?
Yeah, sure. So when we do a bridge deck, we'll pour the concrete, and then on top of that, they'll put down a rubber membrane and seal it so that none of that roadway runoff can get into the deck. And they tip it up the curb so it creates sort of like a bathtub effect. And any water that gets through the pavement theoretically would get into that sort of trough and run its way off the bridge and not penetrate to the deck.
So the point, I asked Mike to give that insight because over, many, many years of designing and building bridges, we've learned that we need to keep that salt out of the deck. And so that membrane is one of those ways that we keep it out of the deck. It extends the life of the bridges. Of course, our assets, we want to get as long a life out of them as we can. So that's one of the ways that we keep that salt out of the concrete. So thanks, Mike. Yes, sir, in the back.
I'm sorry if you covered this. If you pursue the rehab and it's a 15-year lifespan, what happens at the end of the 15 years? Is it another rehab, or is it at that point where we just say, okay, we have to build a new one?
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, we would do another study at that point, and you may end up replacing the bridge then for an increased cost versus what you're seeing now. You might try to rehab it. You'd have to go through the same study process. This would happen all over again, this whole thing.
Did you have another question?
Yeah.
Yes.
In terms of the roadway north of the bridge, you said that there's 100 feet on either side, and we're shifting a little bit west, correct? Is that gonna affect like how much area is on the side of the road? Because like my husband and I, we live just north at 1041, and we tend to walk down the street to the trails. So I just wonder, are we gonna protect some area on the side of the road for pedestrians, I guess?
Yeah. I'd love to talk more about the specifics of your property and the project. We've got, as we develop the project, what you see here is just a plan. It's like a top-down view. We also cut cross-sections every 50 feet on the roadway to give an appreciation of what it looks like as we progress up the road. So that would give a lot of insight relative to what's happening across your frontage. And I want to clarify, so the right-of-way width overall is 100 feet.
Yeah.
It's 50 feet from the center line either side. So what's happening with this plan is showing a shift to the west, which is indicative of what we would have to do for rehab or replacement.
Yeah.
And so we know on this northeast side that just off the bridge and adjacent to the road, the terrain jumps up pretty steep. So with the westerly shift, we'd be into that embankment. We're constructing a ditch line and then a back slope at a 2-to-1 to try to minimize that impact. We are showing impacts onto your property outside the right-of-way, and also a clearing of some of the trees along that section of the roadway. We can have some follow-up discussions relative to that. We can come back out. We can meet with you at your house or here, anywhere you'd like, just to give you a better feel for what it means for your property.
Yeah, I was just more curious about like how much of the side of the road is gonna be available for us to walk, seeing how there's such a steep slope there.
Yeah.
Are we gonna make room?
Is that also the washout side, the side that's been washing out really bad? Because that's washing out. And now, that was gonna be my follow-up question, is that trenches out sometimes 2 feet deeper or more, it's awful. And I was wondering if that had any negative effect on the bridge construction at all, and if it was something DOT was gonna address to not just for the bridge part, but for the road part, because that breakdown may wash stuff across the bridge, or, because I mean, it went down a couple 100 feet, and it was deep. It washed out really bad when the rains came.
Yeah. So we'll have 4 to 5 foot shoulders out here. That's what's shown in the brown.
Okay.
And the lanes, the width of the traffic lanes are 11-foot, Mike?
I think we're 12.
12. So it's either a 12-foot, meaning a 12-foot lane and 4-foot shoulder, or 11-foot lane and 5-foot shoulder for the paved roadway. And then adjacent to that, we'll have a 6-to-1 slope probably that matches down to probably into that ditch. Probably, is this your driveway?
No, we're north of the construction.
Oh, north. Oh, you're
We
north.
are north of the
Okay.
construction,
Okay. I
but
thought
we
you were here.
walked we walk that whole distance. That's
I
why
see.
I was curious
Yep.
about if we're gonna, like, we don't have much of a shoulder now. So
Right.
I'm wondering if this project is gonna be an expansion on the shoulder from what we have existing, and it sounds like we do,
Yes, there will be 4, if not 5 feet of shoulder width
which is
from,
great.
from the white line to the edge of pavement.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, great. Yeah, I thought you would.
Yeah, I like that, yeah.
All right, okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was great. I was going through kind of with an A and B question.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking stage construction doing half the time. I know there's no real viable alternate routes. So you're gonna keep half open at a time, probably signal lights or something. Is there any consideration given to, like you do with the interstate, use like half a bridge at a time, next beams drop in place? So you don't have, like go and close half and keep half open.
It's like accelerated bridge construction, is the next step. Yeah, so next beams aren't gonna be long enough, for this bridge, so the span we're looking at is 180 feet. So I think to do a single span bridge there, it's gonna be a steel bridge beam, and it's probably gonna be stick
Well, the
built.
idea with the precast is it's precast with the deck.
Right, and at 180 feet, that's gonna be just too heavy to pick.
To pick and move.
To pick and move, right, the crane you're gonna have out there is gonna be, just really barely able to pick those beams and set them down by themselves.
But then you could do, not all Ts, but,
Yeah,
so
so
you could use precast deck and drop in place. I mean, you could possibly
precast deck
accelerate it and do it faster, without doing the shift.
Yeah, there are components that we could utilize that would accelerate the construction, right? The deck slabs, potentially. But I think what Mike is saying, from a precast concrete bridge construction, it's just too lengthy. Right, Mike?
Whatever
That's right.
whatever you can do with steel, you can do with precast.
But isn't there limits on the length?
there's
for
limits on
concrete?
the length of the
There's limits on
precast.
steel too, I mean, then you have a suspension bridge, I mean.
Right. Mike, I'm a highway guy. I know enough just to be dangerous. But Mike, the plan, would- and this is
Yeah.
probably a good elevation view to talk about. With steel, you can splice them together.
Correct.
Right.
So yeah, the steel beams would come in 2 pieces, and then you'd either, well, one thing that we're looking at is actually taking traffic off of one lane, right, closing down traffic in one lane, and putting the beams together on the other side, on the other half of the bridge, because you don't have a lot of room to work here. So the beam would come in 2 pieces, one would be longer than the other, and then you bolt it, you pick it off the truck there with your big crane, and you pick it off the truck on the other side with your smaller crane, and then you grab it with both cranes and set it into place onto the new bridge. For a concrete beam, you can't actually get one here long enough. You can't drive it down the road to get it here and then pick it. And then let alone how heavy it is, you wouldn't be able to pick it if you could get it here.
You don't have a truck beam.
Anybody else? Matt, did you want to raise any questions?
I'm sorry, Dave.
It's okay. See, Matt and I work together, so it's all good
I
now.
told him I wouldn't heckle him tonight,
Oh, you're not heckling me, so it's all good.
so far.
Yeah, that you know of.
I guess my questions, as you know, the historic aspect, and if any of those design elements would be looked at as alternatives, even if they were conceptual. For example, the superstructure, right now we have those concrete parapets all the way across. And that's something that's aesthetically contributes to the historic. I think you just passed them, yeah. And then, if there was like a tall, like Prouse section that would be looked at for the columns, having multiple spans.
So multiple spans in the, I'm having trouble following here. So multi-span bridge?
Yeah, so we would keep the arches and those
where you could make those steel and maybe preserve some of the foundation below to come off of, even if it was conceptual, I don't know what, I mean, there's multiple ways to, you know, get a foundation, even with a rock socket, or even utilizing some of the bottom of the leg, and then putting a,
steel beam that kind of takes on that same shape.
right, like the pros.
Yeah, so we did actually look at sort of doing that in one of our rehab options, but some of the difficulties we talked about earlier were, you know, construction in the river. We have difficulty with US Army Corps. Also, you have to get down there, right, and do it, so it's a possibility. I mean, it's not impossible.
Probably also a challenge would be mimicking the shape that exists with anything other than concrete, right? And that's why you looked at the widening with a steel girder, right? Which would be a necessity.
Yeah, and that's what I was brought up, the Prouse Bridge, like
Yeah.
the two I put on 93,
Yeah.
they have that. And that steel is small enough that you could swing into place.
Yeah.
And if you had, it, just as a I know, I understand the construction difficulties, but just as a concept to say, we looked at it and these are the reasons we can't do it.
Yeah. Are you, Matt, are you thinking for the new bridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't look at that specifically as a bridge replacement option in the report that we're looking at now. But we did include sort of like a Prouse Bridge steel beam option in one of our rehab studies. So you could sort of, you know, project those results and get an idea of what a bridge replacement would be. I think it would be very expensive.
But some of those mitigation costs that we'd receive could potentially, just to checks and balances, can we do it, can we not? These are the reasons we can't, you know, just for my mind. The same thing for up top, those, you know, they put planters on them. It'd be nice to keep, so feature like Sewell's Fall Bridge. Similar to that, yeah.
Bridge of Flowers.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep, yep. I'm sure that'll be part of our coordination and discussion with the environmental agencies as we progress. Anybody else? Okay, well, I really appreciate your time tonight. It's been a great discussion. We'll stick around if there's any other questions you want to share with us on a, say, more personal basis. Looking at the plan, we'll be here and we can answer any of those questions for you as long as you'd like. Other than that, have a great evening and rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks. I do have cards on the back table if you'd like. Grab one, you can feel free to give me a call.
You don't want.
So be so heavy.
Definitely
know our.
Because we own the bridge. DOT bridge. Okay. Yeah. What we don't